This week, we're discussing women in sports, a topic that sort of feels like the calzone, in that it's been around for a long time. It's always played second fiddle to pizza, but in reality, it is just as good, if not better, and it deserves your respect. But I want to start with soccer. 14 men's FIFA World Cups were held from 1934 to 1990, before the first official women's FIFA World Cup took place in 1991. 29 years later, and the U.S. women's national team is currently battling with its governing body, U.S. Soccer, for fair pay. In fact, it's gotten so nasty that U.S. Soccer Federation President Carlos Cordeiro resigned in March of this year after court filings showed that he attempted to argue that women players did not perform with equal skill, effort, and responsibility as their male counterparts, which, I mean, come on. The women have won back-to-back World Cups, and I may not be the biggest soccer fan in the world, but the only men's player I can think of at this moment is Landon Donovan, whose last game for the U.S. team came 6 years ago. Another example, this place, Muirfield Golf Course, a treasure of Scotland, the rolling hills and picturesque views created in 1744. The hallowed grounds have hosted illustrious tournaments, including the British Open 16 times. The members, all men, at least for the first 275 years. Thankfully, that changed in 2019. Muirfield now allows women members, but only after a threat from the organizers of the British Open. Having said that, there are still men's-only clubs, including one essentially in our backyard, the Butler National Golf Club in Oak Brook. And this is all to say that while it often feels like women are gaining ground in the battle for a fair and equal playing field, there are still stark remnants of sports being a boys' club. Fortunately, all is not doom and gloom, and there are areas of encouraging progress being made. For instance, Jen Welter in 2015 became the very first female coach in the NFL. Granted, it was part-time, but she opened the door for other women. Just 5 years later, and there are half a dozen full-time female coaches, including Katie Sowers, who won the Super Bowl with the San Francisco 49ers just this past year. Lastly, it only seems appropriate in a piece on women's rights to note the contributions of the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The Supreme Court justice died this past week at the age of 87 after a lifetime of fighting for equality. And lest we forget, odds are she was working out harder than most of us just a year ago. Wow. Her ferocity both in the weight room and in the court of law was recognized in 2019 by the very U.S. women's national soccer team that continues to battle for equal treatment, with RBG written on the back of a jersey and sent to her after the She Believes match between the U.S. and England. And correct me if I'm wrong, but by starting our discussion with the U.S. women's national soccer team and carefully folding back to the U.S. women's national soccer team at the end, I think we just created a calzone conversation on women in sports.